What are some of the common mistakes that students make?
They try to cram a lot of responses, jump into responding too quickly, spend too much time trying to tackle a question which they may be stuck in. Hi, I'm Jay Mahardale. I'm the principal of Northland Primary School. I've also been the PSLE Science Chief Marker for the last 5 years.
So what happens after exam papers are collected?
So all the marking right now is done online. After the PSLE exams are over, all the scripts are accounted for before they are scanned at the back end, and they are actually uploaded into what we call now the on-screen marking system. There will be a preliminary marking scheme conceptualized by the chief setter. And from there, we then have a standardization meeting at SAB with what we call the key personnel. So key personnel would include someone like myself. We will go through the marking points, what are possible acceptable and non-acceptable answers as well. We also actually take a look at students' sample scripts, just to have a sensing about how students may respond to the questions. Then we will decide on updating the marking scheme.
The sample scripts, right? Are they randomly chosen?
Yes, they are. We have a good spread of responses from different schools. Once we have decided on the finalized marking scheme, then the key personnel will bring it back to the marking centers, and we will go through this marking scheme with our markers.
The two answers are acceptable.
If the students could recognize that because it's an insulator of heat, we would give it to them. There is
The practice marking exercise is one way whereby we ensure that our marking is consistent, accurate and fair. Our markers will be given an opportunity to do a practice session with the scripts. The scripts are already pre-marked by the chief marker. And so once the teachers actually try out the questions, it allows our markers to have a good understanding about how to be consistent in their approaches in awarding the marks. And during that process, if certain markers may need a bit more assistance, we will actually provide more guidance. Because of that, we are able to ensure a very rigorous, thoughtful process that allows for students' responses to be accepted.
Am I right to say that the teachers won't mark actual papers until they clear this practice marking exercise?
Yes, it's true.
What are some important skill sets that a marker should have?
When we are deploying markers for the marking exercise, we ensure that they are subject teachers of that subject that they're marking. That helps us in terms of ensuring that there is a good subject knowledge beyond the subject proficiency. We are also looking at making sure that they are also adaptable and flexible in the marking so that they are able to pick up certain responses from the students and able to be sensitive about whether these responses from the students show good conceptual understanding, which may not be sometimes very clear from the students' responses. During the marking process itself, we also sometimes gather some responses which may not have been uncovered during marking standardization. And if we find that these are possible answers that we should use to update in our marking scheme, we'll update SAB. I think that is one way whereby we allow ourselves this space to honour students' responses. And that's how we evolve the marking scheme.
Okay, this is a possible answer. I need to update SAB, right? How long does the process take?
So I must assure everyone that it's actually very, very fast. Usually the SAB personnel are always there to support us. They know that during the first day of marking, there may be possibilities of a lot of queries from the key personnel as well as markers. And so they are there to respond and to make a decision quickly in applying any updates to the marking scheme across all the centres. There is this other control measures that we use. It's called a random check. We will actually pick up the script from the on-screen marking system itself. And if we do spot that certain questions are not marked accurately, we will go to the markers and we have a conversation. There could have been an inaccuracy of applying the marking scheme, but we also want to hear from the markers how they applied their understanding of that particular marking point to that question and that response. And then we will come to a conclusion whether, yep, I think I can take your point, that this actually shows a good conceptual understanding and we can give the mark.
Was there a time where you guys can't reach a consensus?
By and large, most of the time we do reach a consensus. Marking schemes don't focus on keywords, right? Marking schemes focus a lot more on conceptual understanding. Okay, let me just take out my specs just to share with you this example. So usually, right, if we are wearing spectacles in a very cold environment, and when we come out from the cold environment, you might see some water droplets form, so mist forming on the spectacles. And this might be a daily example that students might be asked in a science question. And so the question might be, Why does the water droplets disappear after some time? And in our marking scheme, we ensure that we are looking out for the key marking point, the key concept, which is about water evaporating. We might be thinking, okay, are we looking out for the keywords evaporation? But if a student is able to show that water gains heat, right, and turn into water vapor, they don't need to use the term evaporate. As much as we do honor our students' voices and the responses, we also got to strike a bit of a balance in terms of the level of scientific literacy and also how they respond. Let me just give you an example. If a question asks them about what is the temperature of the hot water in the cup, we would expect them to be able to give the temperature plus the units that's attributed to it. Because these are scientific literacy skills that I think our students must not forego in the pursuit of allowing our students to rephrase or to use their own terms in explaining scientific concepts.
Why do you think parents and students are so fixated on keywords or memorizing right answers or the right templates?
One of my sensing is that sometimes, right, parents in the pursuit of helping their children, they may send their children for additional lessons outside of school. And I think for some of this additional support that the children are getting, they are not privy to the context of the learning environment in the school. And so when they are helping the students to answer questions better, they tend to focus a lot on the keywords. And you know, you get these keywords and you're going to get the marks. In open-ended questions, there are two main kinds of questions. Number one would be questions which test on basic understanding or knowledge. And the second kind of questions would be whereby we are testing our students about the application of their knowledge to different science scenarios. And so what I realize is that many students may feel the open-ended questions challenging because some scenarios might be very unique to them. But what I always assure my teachers and my students as well is that whenever you tackle an open-ended question, it's important to take note that everything that you are tested is within the syllabus. And it's important for you to take a look at the scenario and ask yourself, what concepts am I being tested in this particular scenario? And so what we are trying to encourage our students and parents to do more is to focus a lot more on seeing that science is a subject that you can get better at when you are more curious, when you have a very thirsty knowledge of understanding how things work around you. And that is when they will learn how to connect the concepts that they learn in the classroom to the scenarios that are presented to them in the open-ended questions. For a fact, when it comes to science marking per se, we do not mark our students for spelling or grammar. We don't mark them down for that. But what we do expect is that there is a form of communication that is clear enough for the markers to be able to elicit the conceptual understanding that the students want to express. Once we are able to pick that up, we will allocate marks to our students.
Can we use algebra or trigo for math questions even though those concepts are not taught in school?
Yep, I'm quite sure that for math marking, we are actually able to accept alternative responses. In schools, generally, we do teach them certain heuristics methods that we want them to apply in the exams. One of them will be, for example, model drawing. But I think we've also been able to see that some of our students are able to express their solution through a different method, such as using algebra. And I think we want to honor our students' responses by checking through that their responses are mathematically sound, that it is correct, accurate, and we are able to give them the marks for that.
Since there are various ways to solve a math question, say model, algebra, Sakamoto, how do markers keep abreast with these new concepts?
So this is why I feel that process during standardization is very important in terms of uncovering what are possible responses from the students' sample scripts. During the marking process, when we do encounter certain solutions which maybe the markers might not be too familiar with, the markers will then deliberate together with the key personnel and then decide, okay, is there good mathematical reasoning in the response? And if the student is able to show very good mathematical reasoning is sound, we are able to give the mark for that response. Just to be fair also, we may not be expecting all our markers to be abreast with solving problem methods which are maybe a bit more advanced. But I think what I can assure everyone is that there is that conversation and that we'll be able to lean on each other's expertise to ensure that we have a good understanding about how to allocate those marks. In my experience as a chief marker, I realized that our students sometimes they try to cram a lot of responses, and this could be a result of maybe some of our students memorizing facts, information without applying it to the context of the question. And so what we see is that you may have a regurgitation of all the conceptual understanding and hoping that we will pick up on some of these things, which I think we are also mindful of as markers, because we also got to ensure that whatever that's conveyed by the students don't show any misconceptions as well. And if the students do show misconception, then we will have to penalize the misconception. We would like our students to be able to improve on, answer the question. We really need to teach our kids skills such as being able to discern the depth of questions and their responses.
Is that depending on the marks allocated? That's something that they can look at as a sign of how much they actually need to write?
Not necessarily true. It's not about the mark allocation, but it's also the depth of the question. For example, if a question asks you for a definition, then it's actually very straightforward, right? But if the question asks you explain why you observe certain phenomenon, you would be expecting the students to show understanding of the concept that they have observed in that question. They need to ensure that they are able to analyze and understand the scenarios or the stimulus in the questions better. So the stimulus would be, for example, you have a picture of an experimental setup. They need to maybe spend a bit more time to understand the setup and see how this setup is related to a concept that they've learned. For any exam papers, I think including for science, we want them to take a bit of time to really think through the questions and have a fuller understanding about the expectations of the answers. We want to teach our kids to be a bit more discerning and not jump into responding too quickly in their responses. And I think looking at the demands of the paper that we have, there's enough time for our students to be able to do that well. Definitely not. I feel that a lot of the papers that we set for national exams are actually very fair, and the demands are fact towards what we would see in our primary school students. I think that sometimes there'll be certain questions which are very interesting to the students and they may be a bit more stuck in terms of how they should respond. The onus is really on us to ensure that we give our students that breadth of knowledge, grow their curiosity about understanding the science around them, which will help them a lot whenever they encounter questions which may seem very creative and maybe out of the box. Once we're able to do that, then our students are actually well prepared for tackling such questions. I have this rule, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a rule that I have when it comes to teaching our kids. We should spend 80% of our time making sure that our kids understand the concepts well, so that they understand how it's being applied to day, how the concepts are being tested in different scenarios. And then the 20% of the time, it could be the time whereby we teach them the skills which will help them better in tackling an exam paper. If you see a certain question which you might find a bit more challenging, then of course don't rush into it. Take your time and then go through the questions where you're more familiar with. And the moment you tackle the questions you're more familiar with, it really boosts the confidence of the students. Because if a student spends too much time trying to tackle a question which they may be stuck in, it may deplete their morale and they might not be confident in tackling the rest of the questions. So planning and time management is definitely something that we teach our kids as well. Some students may be stuck in terms of finding the final solution. I would like to encourage the students to take a look at trying your best and tackle the questions as best as you can. Because when you are able to show some form of understanding, you may still get the method marks.
So do you have any general advice for parents preparing their child for PSLE?
I feel that parents are very important partners in schools in terms of making sure that we really focus on developing our students holistically. My personal view is that PSLE is still an important milestone for our students and parents, and many parents do feel that this is really important in terms of giving them good secondary school choices. And so it may be high stakes to some. But I would like to also share this different point of view, that PSLE is actually not an endpoint, but it's just a checkpoint. It's an opportunity for us to apply the things that we've learned in primary school to the best that we can, apply our skills and attitudes, and show our performance and moral character. And I think once we are able to change that view a bit more, you will be able to see that our students can actually look at the PSLE exam questions as a challenge to grow them and develop them further.
So to students watching this who are taking PSLE, what would you like to say to them?
I would like to assure all our students that results doesn't define you as a person. Enjoy your PSLE journey. It is your last hurrah with your friends of primary school, the friends that you made over the last 6 years. These are the people who will be with you when you are tackling that PSLE exam together. See this as an opportunity to work together, collaborate with one another, to ensure that you gain success together as a fraternity.
Thank you for watching. Catch Regardless of Grades as we get to the bottom of Singapore's obsession with grades and find out if it's time to stop chasing the grades. Catch more videos on CNA Insider and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.